Welcome back, everyone, to Inklings Behind the Scenes. This is J.S. Bray with Mr. Bray Labs. And again, I got my good friend and head writer of the show, Cody Lorn on. You want to say hello, buddy?
Hello, how's it going?
Good. It's our Saturday work sesh, which is kind of a rarity, right? I'm working from home. You're working from home. I got the kiddos bouncing around. The wife's out having, lunch with a friend. So we're on borrowed time. So, uh, but yeah. How's your day going?
Going very well. Going very well.
That's good. That's good. Today, one of those things where, my son, he's 9 years old, and his closest buds are also physically his closest buds, and like we have two neighbor kids he likes to hang out with, and the funny thing is like when you're with other folks' kids, you forget that yes, all kids are the same. They're all fun, they're all creative, they all have a lot of energy, but each parent has their own little rules, and one parent is like, oh, this kid can eat anything, doesn't have any allergies. The other one's like, let me know before you give him anything weird. He can't have soda, and so I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, did you ever have any weird rules like that when you were a kid? Did you ever remember going over someone's house and like, I mean, was that something you
Nope.
experienced?
Nope.
No.
Never had any weird rules like that.
Um, I remember I've had a fair amount of friends, but I remember one kid. He was like allergic to everything, and uh, and he was always, like everything he had, his mom was always allergic to it, and it kind of gave him a bit of a complex. Um, but I do remember one thing that he had there because we be poor when I was a kid. They had full fat sodas, so I remember drinking Coca-Cola. And while his parents had all these weird restrictions about different things, he couldn't touch honey and stuff like that. But they had full Coca-Cola. And I was like, this is incredible. I had like a full can of soda by myself. And I was like, this is awesome. Just that hit of sugar. I don't know why parents did that. Yeah, no, nothing like that.
Nope, nothing like that.
All right, that's fine. My world is chaos of kids. I think that's probably why I feel so tethered to Inklings, is because it is these bugs are sort of like kids. Um, our last episode, we talked about two of the characters, and I really wanted to talk about the characters, but I had a really fun topic that I would love to get your opinion on. Um, if our bugs, right? So if our main characters were to sit down at a restaurant, what would they order, and perhaps what kind of restaurant would it be?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
sure. Well, I think Poe would probably go to like a fancy American steakhouse.
All right.
He'd probably order like filet mignon, um,
Huh.
mashed potatoes, gravy.
Oh,
Um,
meat and potatoes, but fancy
yeah,
meat and
yeah,
potatoes. Okay, I
yeah.
like that. I like that. Um, I feel like, I mean, I guess I'm tethered with who Kafka is. I think he's going to order something as messy as you can imagine. I think he's going to get something kind of like spaghetti. Um, I, I feel like, I feel that he's probably going to enjoy a lot of things, but he's going to eat whatever he can get the most of because he's got a lot of energy. And and probably something that has something that has a good dessert menu. So maybe a cheesecake factory. So,
Yeah, yeah, totally. I can see that. I can see that. I
yeah,
have a question for you.
sure.
Um, so we kind of dabbled a little bit about the characters, and I like insights as to like what a character would order if they were at a restaurant. But
Yeah.
I was wondering if we wanted to talk a little bit more about the format of the show of Inklings, and
Sure.
if you think we're ready to share, kind of like the format of the show. It's definitely evolved over the years. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's great. I mean, you and I have had a great deal of conversation with it. Formats have become somewhat archaic, but not entirely. So, like as media has evolved, right? We can give people a huge history lesson about it, but or you can just look at stuff in front of you, the portrait, landscape, HD. But really, the shows. When I think of format, I think of the shows that we loved. That gave us the most bang for your buck, right? And that's Animaniacs. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the show. The Animaniacs. It was the show that had everything. It was variety, it was character driven, it was comedy, it was thoughtful, it was silly, it was both as silly as it was insightful. Yeah, that. I mean, I'm sure. Yeah, tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah. When we originally started talk, talking about Inklings and how we wanted the show to run, we initially, I think we initially decided that there would be like 2 to 3 classic stories, public domain stories, whether they were, classic literature to like grim fairy tales that the Inklings would explore like per episode. And I feel that now that you know we've uh, now that we've expanded our characters and we're like, wait a minute, we could take Treasure Island and stretch that up among 3 or 4 20-minute episodes.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
but now that we have decided that Inklings is going to be more of a variety show with different skits and sketches and acts, more in the style of Animaniacs, that it kind of allows me as a writer to kind of breathe and relax a little bit more, and
yeah,
not get as balled up about um, having to incorporate uh, X number of um, stories within a 20-minute episode, and we can kind of switch it up and
oh totally.
let the episodes breathe a little bit. Um, yeah,
I think that's we are in a day of television, and I'm going to answer this question with just like an observation. We're in a day and age of television that people have so much wonderful entertainment, that people have had the luxury of time and all these other stuff that come before us that they can look at. Like, there's no sense to do the same thing that's already been done. There's no sense in it. And so what makes the Animaniacs format work, it's sort of the non-format. The variety show is anything goes. And I think that's what's been the success of Animaniacs that brought it back. My favorite bit was back in the day. This is how old I am, but back in the day, there were certain things that weren't allowed on cartoons unless there was a clear moral through line. Like, cartoons were for kids, and they always had a message. And I think that every story has a message, no question. And there is always something that you're trying to get across, an insight. And specifically with children's entertainment, you want it to be uplifting. But there was this, my favorite bit, and I think we've mentioned this to you a bunch, was the Wheel of Morality. You remember the Wheel of Morality?
I don't remember
Okay,
that one, but it's
okay,
been on my homework to-do list to
okay.
rewatch Animaniacs.
So in Animaniacs, my favorite thing was the Wheel of Morality. It was the Wheel of Morality. Turn, turn, turn. Show us the lesson that we should learn. And when it would spin and they would tell them what some sort of random, like almost like a fortune cookie advice about life. Now, this is not to say the show was like completely depraved of any sort of insights about characters and stuff like that. It's just that the show itself was silly, and that they had no problem breaking formats just to break formats, and doing stuff like that. It makes a good kids show silly. Uh, like that's something about the difference between being creative. I've heard it said. Actually, I heard a really brilliant lecture by John Cleese. Um, the difference between somebody who's like creative and maybe a not so creative person is not IQ; it's their ability to play. Um, and that ability to play that we lose when we get older and we get too serious about life, it actually impacts your mental health. It impacts your relationships. You're always too stuffy to have, silly conversations. And the pure play of it is just to look at an idea and just have fun with it. Just
Yeah.
that's the pure, and that's what I love about the creative process. So
Yeah,
yeah.
totally. Um, I so now that Inklings has evolved into more of a variety show, um, I was kind of hoping maybe we could share some of our conversations about what type of acts and sketches we would feature within the show. What do you
Sure.
think about that?
Yeah, I think that's also a good thing to talk about. Different types of comedy. So, like, I'm a guy, and I know it sounds kind of like this is a gender normative stereotype, but I think it's pretty clear. Uh, Men typically love slapstick. Okay, from Tom and Jerry to Three Stooges, we just love a character who endures some physical pain. And it's I love sketch comedy. I love the sense where there is a sense of like clear line of like maybe someone's going to get hurt. It could be, some sort of circumstances that happen, but we're going to have sketches. We're going to have slapstick. We're going to have situational humor. We're going to have, good old dad jokes with good, cringy puns. But yeah, that's definitely what I see taking place as a wonderful cornucopia of different types of comedy taking place.
Absolutely. I see comedy peppered throughout the show. I see Pinky and the Brain esque type of
Oh
sketches,
yeah.
maybe with Kafka, and maybe there's a sketch where Kafka needs to return a book, and he's got a fellow bug friend with him, and maybe they even explore and teach the audience about the Dewey Decimal System, which
Oh
I think is a
yes.
really important aspect about the library.
Oh
Um,
yes.
I see. I do see ensemble pieces where we do still maintain and hold on to that original concept of the show, where all of the bugs dive into a classic story together and kind of act it out and play it out.
Oh
Um,
yes.
but
Yes.
but but also, we also should also take into account who the characters are individually. I see maybe Bronte or I think Ogilvy talking, or maybe reading poems, or um, talking about more lighthearted tales.
Sure.
Um, I see maybe Poe reading horror stories or diving into more uh, slightly darker stories.
Sure. Sure. I
Um,
think yeah, I think there's definitely a way to introduce like maybe more scary elements to preschool kids that without like going deep dark into the pit because
yeah,
All of these authors, all of them were, they created these works that are above even adults in some ways. A character we haven't talked about is a sea slug, and his name is Herman, and he's named after Herman Melville, who wrote Moby Dick, which is this gigantic tome of a work. It's just this really dense piece of literature. I mean, it is the intellectual equivalent to like running a 10K. If you've read that, you've accomplished some things. And for people who really love that, I think that's also, it kind of shows you like they one love to torture themselves. They like to kind of endure a hardship to see the fruit at the end. Um, but there's ways that we can share these stories with children. Wizard of Oz is a children's story, but it's deeply symbolic, deeply layered.
oh yeah,
Um,
very much.
and in some ways, I think it's been probably the most overlooked but powerful story that we have in American history. I mean, Wizard of Oz is such this passionate story that we've had considering how deep the well is in Wizard of Oz, no one's really redone the first Wizard of Oz. It was done almost 100 years ago, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there have been a few different iterations of it where they've done remakes. I think there was like a Michael Jackson or Janet Jackson remake of it. There have been a few animations of Wizard of
Hmm.
Oz, but yeah, nothing really stands out compared to the classic. film with Judy Garland.
Yeah, it was done so well, and because it was the story, the art, the music, the unveiling from black and white to color. I mean, it was a technical masterpiece. It was a musical masterpiece, and so, but nonetheless, there's like these layers to it. So you've heard the layers, like it's a picture of industrial revolution. Have you not heard this one?
I don't believe I've heard that one.
You might enjoy this. So, I mean, I know we're talking, behind the scenes, but one of the things that I heard was an example, and I don't know if this is true. I just know that I've heard people kind of present this idea. So we know that, Wizard of Oz, the little girl, she gets caught up in a tornado, and she lands in this other world, right? Um, and there is this. I heard this person say that the greenbacks is Emerald City, the Golden Brick Road is the gold standard, the Tin Man is supposed to be the industrial industry because it was had no heart, and they're saying, and there's like this like royalism with the lion. There's this farmers, which they're saying were kind of mindless. It's this weird political commentary that someone kind of, I don't know, transposed or if it actually was there over this really just fun adventure and very original story. That is like the most purest slice of Americana that you can possibly come up with in the last 300 years. I mean, it's just it's pure Americana. There's so much about it that's purely American. Like a little flat town, Kansas, in the middle of nowhere. It was it's really great because it's a lot of our stories, right? They're they're European or they're
Yeah.
from like a lot of our. Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of our stories are very European, and I mentioned Brothers Grimm earlier,
Yeah.
and a lot of the stories, um, I've heard people say like there's no original ideas, and to some extent I agree because most stories are going to be either man versus man, man versus self, man versus God, man versus nature, right? And
Yeah.
then from there, you've got other different types of like story tropes, like coming of age or fish out of water. Um, and so, to some degree, I agree with that. But every story, uh, there are layers of of subtext. I had a writing teacher in um, in school that we went to, and he said everything is cliche. What matters is how you tell it,
Oh
and
yes.
I agree with that sentiment so much because although there are there are those broader themes, yes. I could argue either way that yes, there is no original story anymore. There are core common themes that are present in many iconic stories, books, and films that everyone's familiar with. But what makes something special and unique is how you tell the story and what you can, the things you implement to make it stand out and stand apart from something else
Absolutely.
similar.
No, absolutely. I think story isn't about necessarily about originality, and here I think story is about conveying the human experience. And so,
Absolutely.
right, you've been in love. Someone else has been in love. There's almost nothing foreign to your experience that hasn't been shared, and you should take comfort in the saints and sinners who've gone before you, who've experienced these things, and you can learn from them. That's and if we turn back the clock a millennium, it was about knowing our ancestors because our ancestors was our Wikipedia. Our ancestors was our encyclopedia of knowledge of how to live, love, and go on. Um, and so that is sort of the beauty of a good story is that you're not alone. You're not feeling anything that's unique, and not in a mean way, but just saying that's normal. Um,
Yeah, they're
yeah,
common human experiences.
yeah. We this is where I think it's truly the purest art is storytelling, and And I think that's what we're trying to capture with Inklings is that there is this layer, there's depth to it. The strong literary component is to me the bedrock of the show is because these characters are inspired by real authors who wrote real things about real life, and they're deep. And so they're not some pop artist off the shelf who may not be around 100 years because these people were using like public domain authors. They've already they've already passed the test, right? they're already they're already
Absolutely.
they're already good. Their work has endured past their death. And no matter how much we love their work and how much we're in some ways having an homage to them, we never have to face a contemporary critique from the actual authors. We are never going to hear Mark Twain say, your version of my story stinks.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
uh, and so that's the well that we draw from. Um, yeah, this is great stuff. I want to kind of just bring up one last little point, and then maybe we can wrap up this particular episode. Um, so with story format, right? When do you feel, and this is when do you feel that format is bad? Like, go.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know, like when format is bad. I think there are times not when format is not necessarily bad, but maybe the format isn't implemented correctly. So, for movies, for example, there are two types of film uh, as far as storytelling goes. There's linear, which
Mm-hmm.
has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then there's non-linear, which kind of bounces around. Maybe it shows the ending first, and then it goes back and says, "Oh, okay. Well, here I'll show you how I got to where I am."
Sure.
Um, I don't. I can't think of anything off the top of my head where a format is bad. What about yourself?
So, okay, this is might be because I'm a creative. I'm definitely the type of person that I do obsess about the details, but I'm also the type of person that really doesn't like too many details. And
Hmm.
so I almost obsess about too much details. So like I'm like, are you giving too much? Because this is where a format is great. It's a structure. We have a
Hmm.
character, we have these designs, we have these characters, but relationships are not necessarily formulaic. What makes a really good experience is one that isn't exactly predictable. It is, you can kind of suggest like, okay, I'm going to go on vacation. I'm going to sit by the beach. I'm going to maybe go in the pool. I'm going to have some food. That's great. But then there's a bit of that excitement of I don't know what's going to happen, and
Yeah.
sometimes the format strangles it for me. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
if everything is formatted and scheduled, sometimes I met someone one time who said that what is it uh, a lack of spontaneity is like the thief of joy.
Oh
So,
yeah,
so like
there you right.
if everything is scheduled and structured, like there's no excitement, you know. So I agree with you there. I have a question for you.
Sure.
What what type of when you think of Inklings as a show, what other types of sketches come to mind as far as what the bugs what the Inklings might do? I mentioned maybe Kafka and his yes man, whoever that is, um, maybe on a mission to put away books through the Dewey Decimal System. We
Yeah.
talked about Poe potentially diving into more slightly darker literature, whether it's
Hmm.
horror stories or not. What other ideas do you have as far as sketches or skits that we could, or variety acts that we could implement in the show?
And that's a great question because that's something that to me I think the true lightning in the bottle, the true excitement, the unpredictability. That while I love a good format, love a good structure, you show an outline for all the stories we have. I mean, we have hundreds and hundreds of outlines and ideas and scripts and all this stuff to put together, which is great. But when we put together, like, okay, where does it make the most sense for this episode? It's always going to be the story, right? The story is king, but
Absolutely.
we need to have story. It can't just be silliness, right? There has to be some stakes involved. However, because this is a comedy show, and because there is a lot of educational components, but it's educational because being around these people who are so honest, you're going to learn. Right? When you're around your grandma and your grandpa, you're not just learning because they're there lecturing you. You're there because they love you and they're going to be real with you. And that's why you learn. And so, what I want to see is I want to see the improv. I want to see the true feeling of improvisation. This is why it's so important to find good fits with the creatives. You and I can sit down, we can write all this stuff out, and we can map out all, like a whole season, and it's just be you. We can voice everybody, but we're still going to miss that magic component of a voice actor saying, knowing the characters so well that maybe they'll improvise a line that is even more beautiful than what we put on paper. You know,
Absolutely.
a composer that says, you know what, you're missing something here. You're missing some of the drama of when Poe waltz in, like, you know, like Dracula. And there's some sort of way, like these little nuances that makes Miyazaki brilliant, right? I've mentioned this past. It's when he grabs a little bit of back at the heel when when a person puts their foot into a shoe, and Miyazaki animates that. He goes out his way just to move their glasses just a little bit to make it a little bit more human. So
Absolutely. As you know, where my heart lies, as far as live action filmmaking, I feel that the film, the story within the film, um, it evolves over three different iterations, three different phases. Right? There's
mhm.
the writing phase. There's the production phase where the artist, the actor, adds their spin and their take and their creative influence to the character they are portraying. And then, so there's two levels there where the actor will kind of build and expand upon what the screenwriter wrote,
Mhm.
and adds their own depth. And then finally, the third iteration is in the edit.
Yeah.
So I really find that the real true story and the not necessarily the motivations of the character, but the the completion of a character and a story and a plot really takes place between those three phases: the writing, the production, the acting, and the edit.
Oh,
Finding the story, maybe the hidden gems within the story. Um,
yes. Yes.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that relationship is so important. I think this is why. I mean, we've mentioned this at some points, but we are working on a very skeleton crew. You know, it's me, you, and a couple other folks. It's very small. We have Nat, we have Daniel, we have you, and myself, and then I mean, a lot of the stuff is a lot of the big ideas that you and I have worked on. Like we worked on the biggest ideas, and then like the design ideas, it's more of my wheelhouse. The big picture, the arcs and stuff like that. But when we've talked about this series, why the chemistry is so important is that we want to have a show that it's not that it doesn't need editing, but that it feels bigger than it is. It feels larger than life. Because Hollywood shows, big production, they have a room full of writers and they'll get together and these whole room full of writers will come up all their great ideas and they'll bounce off the ideas and they'll do it in such a way that, it'll just be seamless on screen. And we've seen their stuff and we want to bottle that. We want to be able to capture that same sort of energy that kind of draws people in. And I really do feel like that's why we need that sense of spontaneity. We need that sense of authenticity of the characters so that you and I, that's not that we invented these characters, that they're alive. Okay, man, if you killed me, they would still be alive. Okay, like that's like they're alive. And they may have been inceptions inside our heads, but these creative babies they're alive. Um, they're more than just something that we're pushing lines through their lips. I know that makes any sense. It's a little poetic, but it's how I kind of feel about it. It's like they're
No,
bigger than just yeah.
I agree. I agree. The characters that people create, they transcend. Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz, she kind of transcends, the the original author and filmmakers. So
Oh yeah, my we could probably talk about this forever, but I'll leave it this last thought. When I was a kid, one of my favorite superheroes was Superman. Okay, and I got to a point where growing up with Superman that I really know and I love Superman. But I saw a Superman film, uh, and I was very upset because they had Superman do a thing that I thought that Superman would never do. And I'm like, and here it is. I didn't create Superman. I just had read a lot of Superman and consumed a lot of Superman, and that's what I want. To me, one of the earmarks of success is someday there'll be some sincere person, writer, creative, kid, adult, whatever it is, that they're going to say, hey, this is how Kafka would behave. This is how Bronte would behave. This is how Poe would behave. Like this, these are how I mean, like we can almost not even pass the torch, that we could also share the torch with other people because we know they respect enough of who these characters are that they're not going to, create something that's not who they are. And that's, I guess that's part of the creative process that I feel a little like precious about. It's that I don't want someone to just kick down the doors and just add every idea. I want them to know who these characters are. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that's why we're building it in such a way. We're building it community first. We've been building it for a long time, but the beauty of this podcast is that we're building it in front of other people, so people can see that this process is not one. It's not a straight line. Creative process is not a straight line. It's all over the place. It's spaghetti, but it is intentional. So it's intentional. It's we are sculpting a giant pile of clay and we're trying to find the characters with it. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah,
Before we wrap up,
yeah.
I would like to make an announcement as far
Cool.
as one of the particular sketches. Um, do you think it's okay for me to make this announcement?
Go for it. Yeah, yeah. Let's hear it.
Okay. So the one of the sketches that Jesse and I have discussed is going to be it's tentatively titled Bronte's Book Club.
Yes.
When we grew up in the 90s, there was a show on PBS called Reading Rainbow,
Oh
where
yes.
Reading Rainbow introduced the public and the audience to books, real life physical books that you could either buy at a bookstore or check out at your local library. And the host, LeVar Burton, would read the book and show the illustrations. So, in the vacuum left in the wake of Reading Rainbow no longer being in production, we have decided that on this one particular sketch, whether it's Bronte or Kafka, whichever character the sketch ends up being designated to, um, our animated character is going to introduce real life kids' books produced by real life authors. Um, we're going to do our research and find up and coming authors. Maybe they may be up and coming. Maybe they might be slightly established as children's literature authors. Um, we're not. We're still in the early stages. We're still throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying to
Sure.
figure out all the details to that. But that is one thing that I am very excited about, is to kind of showcase um, children's authors of children's literature, and showcasing their real book that you as an audience member can go to the bookstore or go online and purchase, or go to the library and check out. Um, the book will be featured in our show, and that is something I am very excited about.
Oh, I love the idea. We talked about Bronte's book club or Inklings book club. We haven't figured out the exact kind of title and the format. And as you know, some of the stuff we are kind of building the plane as we move along. But the truth is that each episode, the goal is to have sort of a book interactive version of it. So this is sort of the beauty for how long that Cody and I have been working together. We have a lot of talent amongst ourselves, not to be kind of like, as my old British friend used to say, bibbity boasty about, but we could potentially turn these into apps and coloring books and all the sort of fun stuff that allow the audience to engage. So the purpose is not gross commercialism, it's the level of engagement. So, when I was a kid, I remember over and over again those Justice League activity books. My mom would go and get us those Justice League activities, and they were probably like a dollar back then, or maybe even less because I was a kid of the '80s and early '90s. But I remember that engagement, and I remember drawing in Batman's cape, and then afterwards, it would have like a little crossword puzzle, like something like you realize this sort of play gets people involved. I want kids to read more than ever. Okay, I want kids to be able to understand. Like right now, we set the bar for children, and I know it sounds a bit of a soapbox, and I'll just cut it off this because it's a longer episode. But children don't need that bright color garbage. It doesn't need to just be like bounce, 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 bounce. It should be something that moms and dads and parents and whoever is with their kids, they can sit there and they can be entertained. They can be uplifted. They can be inspired to do more. They can learn stories that are about adventure, about life, about relationships. It doesn't have to feel loaded. It doesn't have to feel like a babysitter. Um, and that we can do things together. Children do better when they read. They do. And they absolutely do better when they read. And so there's all these different things that I feel is lost if we don't take the time as storytellers to say, hey, let's pick up a book with some kids. Let's fill that vacuum, like you said, with the Reading Rainbow. Because
Absolutely.
that I mean, God bless LeVar Burton for being there, because I could say the fruit of his work is still alive in my life. LeVar Burton and Mr. Rogers, they may not ever be another one like them, but there's still inspiration from them. And so I feel that is definitely within the heart and soul of Inklings, to feel that literary need to tie in learning and not make it feel stuffy. So
Absolutely. I had just one final thought.
sure.
When I was younger in elementary school, one of the more influential people in my life was my elementary school librarian, and her name was Nina Prakash. And Mrs. Prakash is no longer with us. However, one of the things she would always say was that reading a book is a gift to yourself.
Mm.
And I, it's taken me a number of decades to really soak that information in and realize what it means. But through Inklings and developing Inklings and um, creating sketches and skits to get kids excited about reading again, um, that quote has resonated with me, and
Oh,
that is something I'm very excited to implement in the production and the creation of Inklings.
oh, awesome! I'm there with you, Cody. That's fantastic. I think that's a wonderful way of. It is a gift to yourself. Um, Well, thank you everyone again for listening to us. This is a longer episode, but it's really been just great to just chat with you guys and you folks, and have you here in the writers' room, kind of how we spitball our ideas and how we kind of come together. Yeah, thank you so much again for being a part of our community. Please reach out. We're excited to hear your own insights. And just have you be a part of it. Thank you again, Cody, for being on. And we will all see you on the stream. And I hope you all have a blessed day. You take care.